In chapter 3, you learned about the simple sentence and what it is and what makes up that kind of sentence. So the textbook now introduces you to what is called the compound sentence. And when you read the definition of it, it should make sense as to why one's simple and one is compound. So, as you learned in chapter 3, a simple sentence contains one independent clause. And remember, an independent clause is when you have a complete subject and a complete verb working together. So it's a complete thought. So you can have other elements beyond that, but there's only one of those. So a compound sentence, in comparison, has two independent clauses, which means you've got two separate subject-verb combinations. And that can be confusing because, as you've also already learned, you know that you can have compound subjects, compound verbs, other compound elements. So if you look at the example down here, the dog and the cat are a compound subject, right? So it's only one subject there, even though you see the dog and the cat. That's a compound subject because they both ate, right? They're both working together on one verb, and then they both left. So this is a compound verb and a compound subject, but because there's two nouns and two verbs does not make it a compound sentence, right? If you wanted to cut the sentence down by that test I mentioned, they ate and left. Okay, so there's only one subject and ultimately two verbs, but you've got to have a verb and a subject and a verb and a subject in order to make a compound sentence. So let's look at the example up here. The dog ate his food. So very simply, the dog ate, that's one, and he then ate the cat's food. So he ate again. Okay, so here is your first subject-verb combination. Here's your second subject-verb combination. And here is here's a big clue. The comma and the coordinating conjunction are what separates the two. Okay, so that's the basic principle behind compound sentences. So you've got three types, and those types are determined by how your independent clauses are separated. So as in the example I just provided, the independent clauses are separated by a comma and a conjunction, but you can also separate the independent clauses by just a semicolon, or you can separate them by a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb. So let's take a look at an example of each type. So the dog ate his food, comma, and there's your comma and your coordinating conjunction. He then ate the cat's food. Okay, that's type 1. Type 2, the dog ate his food, semicolon. He then ate the cat's food. The one thing you want to be sure about your semicolons is that both sentences have to relate very, very closely. So, like if you had a sentence that said, my favorite color is blue, semicolon, his favorite color is purple, they're not related enough. A semicolon there is inappropriate. But here, it's a continuation of the dog's actions. So it's much more closely related, and a semicolon would be okay here. So type 3, the dog ate his food, comma, conjunctive adverb. If you need more examples of what the conjunctive adverbs are, the textbook lists some of them for you. Look on page 122, and it's got a nice list. It's things like however, nevertheless, things like that. Just because you don't know the name of them, they should sound relatively familiar. So here's your semicolon coordinate, or I always want to say coordinating adverb. It's a conjunctive adverb because it's a conjunction. It's adding people. It's adding the two thoughts together. Really, it's a word that is bringing them together, just like your conjunction. It's a conjunctive adverb. Anyway, the dog ate his food, semicolon. Not surprisingly, It's your conjunctive adverb. He then ate the cat's food. Okay? So, since you've got 3 different ways to do this, this allows you even more variety in your writing. So you can have simple sentences, and even within your simple sentences, you can have compound subjects, verbs, and stuff like we just talked about. So even if it's a simple sentence, you can make it quite long. But if you want a really short and sweet simple sentence, that adds emphasis. So if you have a couple of those in a paragraph, and then some longer simple sentences, and then a couple compound sentences that use the different separation techniques that you see here, you're adding so much variety, and you've only learned 2 sentence types. There are 2 more to go. Okay, so you can start really building and expanding on what you have. Okay, so change up how you separate your independent clauses. Now, the one thing I will say about that, if you don't know how to use a semicolon, this is how you use a semicolon properly. Most people don't know how. I think they get confused and they see that a semicolon has a comma at the bottom. So they think, oh, a semicolon's like a comma, and that's not true. A semicolon is more closely related to a period. So a reason you wouldn't want to put a period in this sentence, for example, is because you're showing that continuation of thought. Does that make sense? So when you want a semicolon, it's less of a break than a period, but it's more of a separation than a comma. So if you're confused, don't use them. It's better for you not to use them, because then your reader isn't going to notice. They're not going to sit there and think, they didn't use a semicolon, they're obviously dumb. No, they're not going to think that at all, are they? But if you use a semicolon inappropriately, especially more than once, they might start to question your intellectual abilities. So if you're comfortable with them, use them. Try. Give it a whirl. What's the worst that's going to happen? I say, you're not using this correctly. Because the more you practice, the more you will get comfortable with them. But if you're just totally terrified of semicolons, then just don't use them. It's better to not use them and not use them incorrectly. Okay? But try. I do challenge you to try. Give it a whirl. Okay, I've already mentioned this first point about having 2 closely related, it's really not sentences, they're clauses. Make sure the clauses are really clearly related. If you're going to separate them by a semicolon, make sure with the conjunctive adverb, you always have the comma afterwards. So it's highlighted in red right here if you can see that. But if you go back here, after not surprisingly, there is a comma. You always have to have a comma there. Okay, that's an introductory clause. You need to set it off with a comma. And then again, with another place you always have to have a comma, so if you're coordinating conjunction, boom, right there. The dog ate his food, comma, and then your conjunction. All right, so just a quick note that I added. How you determine these sentences and how you separate them adds emphasis. So make sure that you're using them consciously and for good reason. It's a choice that you're making. It's called rhetoric. Rhetoric is when you make a choice about how you're trying to persuade somebody or to help them just, get into your writing. So if you just, break up your sentences for no logical reason, your reader might pick up on that. So as I said with the example of a really short, simple sentence, you want to do that for a very specific reason. You want to create emphasis by drawing their attention there with a really quick thought. If you just do that for no reason, the reader's going to be like, "What? Why did they do that?" So be really conscious of how you separate your compound sentences with the 3 different types we just went over. So with these types of sentences, there are a couple errors that are very, very common, but they're really, really simple to fix. You already know how to fix them. I just showed you how to fix them, and there's one more way to fix them too. But I'll get to that on the last one. So the first one is a comma splice. It's when a comma is used where a semicolon or a period should be used. So again, a semicolon is more equivalent to a period. It's not as strong, but it's closer to a period than a comma. So in this example, the house is on fire, comma, the fire started in the kitchen. You could fix this by changing it to a period and capitalizing the. Then it would just say the house is on fire. The fire started in the kitchen. I wouldn't recommend having choppy sentences like that, but at least it's grammatical. Or you can replace the comma here with a semicolon. You can even add a coordinating, a conjunctive. See, I did it again, a conjunctive adverb. You could also add in a conjunction. I mean, there's so many ways to fix these things. The issue is that you just need to find them. I think these happen most often when people are just trying to write a compound sentence, but they forget the coordinating conjunction. So easy fixes. You just have to find them. Same with run-on or fused sentences. There are two names. It's the same error. So fused or run-on. And it's when no punctuation is placed between the independent clauses. So same information. The house is on fire. The house started in the kitchen, or the fire started in the kitchen. That's how somebody would read it. You need to have a break in there of some kind. So again, a period, a semicolon, and a conjunctive adverb, a comma, and a coordinating conjunction. They're easy ways to fix them. So at first I was saying there are 2 or 3. No, there's multiple ways to fix these things. Again, you just have to find them. So I think it, again, happens with few sentences that you just kind of keep typing and you don't stop to accommodate for proper punctuation. Okay, so there are 2 common errors, but really easy to fix. So you can start, since you are getting more detail about this type of sentence, start using it. Start using it in your papers and your assignments. It really shouldn't be anything new to you, so I'm hoping you're already using them anyway, but play with them. Play around and see how you can combine your simple and your compound sentences within a paragraph. Think about how you can separate your compound sentences. Use that semicolon. Challenge yourself. So yeah, just try alternating and see how it creates cohesion and flow to your writing. You can also add compound elements to your compound sentences. So you can have compound subjects and all the other compound elements to add even more complexity. I've already said that you can create cohesion. So yeah, just give it a go. Challenge yourself. Try to alternate and build up more complex structures in your paragraphs. Just play around with it. There's so many options for you to do. Just try to be conscious about it. I think I've said that so many times. Just make a choice and do it. And just try to do it purposefully. So if you have any questions, let me know.